Hi, my name is Alyssa Hansen, and this is my presentation on John Dewey, the father of progressive education. So I'm going to talk about who John Dewey was, his works, and then his impact today. So who is John Dewey? John Dewey was born on October 20th, 1859 in Burlington, Vermont. He grew up in the Congregational Church and also attended public school. At the age of 15, he went on to the University of Vermont, where he first learned about the evolutionary theory through the teachings of G.H. Perkins and T.H. Huxley's work titled Lessons in Elementary Philosophy. He also learned about natural selection. After he graduated in 1879 at only 19 years old, Dewey taught high school for 2 years, before he sent a philosophical essay to W.T. Harris, the current editor at the time of the Journal of Speculative Philosophy. After receiving his acceptance letter back, Dewey decided to attend graduate school at Johns Hopkins University for philosophy. This is where he met two very influential figures in his life, George Sylvester Morris and G. Stanley Hall. Both of these influences created a tension between Dewey, which led him to try and solve the question of whether the world was biological or spiritual. Then, in 1884, Dewey received his doctorate after only 2 years at Johns Hopkins University. After this, he began a teaching position at the University of Michigan, where he spent the next 10 years, except for 1 year in 1888 that he spent at the University of Minnesota. During these 10 years, he met his wife, Harriet Alice Chipman, which they had 6 children together and adopted another. He also met James Hayden Tufts, who in 1894 transitioned to the newly developed University of Chicago along with Dewey. Here, Dewey was the head of the philosophy department, where he built it up with his partners G.H. Mead and G.R. Engel. He also founded the laboratory school, where he tested both psychological and education theories, as well as the pedagogical method. His wife, Alice Chipman, was the principal of the school from 1896 to 1904. Moving on, Dewey resigned from the University of Chicago and was then shortly after invited to the philosophy department at the Columbia University in 1904. He spent the rest of his professional career there. Then in 1930, Dewey retired from teaching, but was still a very influential part of society as he led a number of organizations, wrote for non-academic spectators, and spoke out for political events, as well as gave many guest lectures at many different colleges. His wife, Alice Chipman, sadly died in 1927, so then Dewey went on to remarry Roberta Lowitz Grant about 20 years later. And then on June 2nd, 1952, John Dewey died of pneumonia at the age of 92 in New York City. So what were some of Dewey's works? He started his career out at the University of Michigan, where he wrote his first 2 books, Psychology, and then his new essays concerning the human understanding. These books explored the combination of ideas between idealism and experimental science, and they were also influenced by the Hegelian idealism. As Dewey continued his Hegelian and idealism viewpoint, he titled it Experimental Idealism. And then at the University of Chicago, Dewey then developed his theory of knowledge based on pragmatism. This emphasized the importance of ideas and actions within practice. And it was also known as epistemology, which was framed by his theory of inquiry. With Dewey's new focus on inquiry, he believed that this was an activity that required problem solving, and that the object of knowledge is built within the process of inquiry. He also saw truth to be a fact and not a process, which led him to try and answer the question that previous philosophers, such as John Locke and René Descartes, tried to answer, and that is, if thought is separate from the world, can there be an accurate depiction of the world? His solution to this question is found in his earlier works titled Is Logic a Dualistic Science? And the Present Position of Logical Theory. He was also influenced by natural selection, which led him to have a naturalistic approach through his theory of knowledge. He believed that organisms interacted with their environment, and that adaptation to an environment was very important in order to change it. Then at the University of Chicago, he moved more towards an evolutionary approach, which allowed him to understand that an action included both a stimulus and a response, and that manipulation of an environment was very important in trying to understand how an organism adapts. And these ideas are reflected in his article titled The Reflex Arc Concept in Psychology. Moving on to some more of his works, John Dewey was also known for his belief in the democratic form of life, which meant that an individual responds to their needs through experimentation. He also suggested that democratic habits begin early in a child's education, so that as a society we should truly view education or school as an extension within society. And these ideas were seen in his first piece of work on education titled The School and Society. Dewey also applied integrative naturalism and metaphysics in his theory of knowledge, which was seen in his 4 essays called Studies in Logical Theory. And in these studies, he had 3 phases in the process of inquiry that had a genetic factor. Dewey was also involved in metaphysics through his belief that experience was important to metaphysical explanations. And these are seen through his works titled The Subject Matter, A Metaphysical Inquiry, and The Introduction to Essays in Experimental Logic. Dewey then began to look at philosophy through an educational lens after writing Democracy and Education to create his magnum opus. His work, Human Nature and Conduct, as well as Art as Experience, reflected his view, or his atomistic view of society within the Hobbesian social contract. He also believed that accomplishment could be achieved if social habits worked towards it. He continued his focus on education through his magnum opus and Democracy. And then in 1931, Professor William James's lecture at Harvard University sparked Dewey's interest and creation of his aesthetics theory. This is when he began to explore his interest in art through the nature of experiences and the process of an artist. He also believed in the importance of not only physical aspects, but the meaning that artists attach to their work through expression. So what is Dewey's impact today? So his practices and theories had a specific impact on academics. His learning theory is seen through the collaboration using technology that emphasizes social connection during academic activities. And then in the response classroom, this is the type of classroom that provides a safe and happy environment for children in order for them to receive high-quality education. And then the organization, routines, and positive social interactions that are emphasized within this approach are specifically what Dewey believed in. Then his beliefs in the democratic lives, including creativity, problem solving, and communication, are found in learner-centered programs, which emphasize each of these factors to enhance student skills and for them to gain knowledge through personal meaning. This also focused on other factors, including social, physical, and emotional growth, and not just educational. The main focus in each of these being on the children instead of the content is how they align with Dewey's beliefs. Even though some of Dewey's theories are still seen in academic programs today, a majority of education systems use Common Core, which set specific benchmarks for students in order for them to gain the proper amount of information before college. But even though Common Core is used widely, systems like Montessori schools, philosophy for children, and place-based educations also integrate Dewey's theories and practices. And like I said, even though a majority of education systems use Common Core, each of these programs and systems are evidence that Dewey's theories and practices are still used today. And they are also evidence of how much of an impact Dewey has had to this very day. So I talked about who Dewey was, his works, and then concluded with his impact today. These are my references. And thank you for watching. I hope you learned more about John Dewey, the father of progressive education.